And this is Real Estate Underground. Greetings and salutations, Real Estate Undergrounders. It's Ed Matthews with the Real Estate Underground. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, I am very excited to introduce you all to Brian O'Neill from W2 Prison Break. I had the honor of appearing on his amazing podcast a few weeks back, and the conversation was so interesting that I begged him and pleaded for him to join us on our podcast, and he has graciously agreed. So, Brian, welcome to the show, and thank you very much for your time today. Good to see you, my friend.
Ed, it's great to see you again, and I got to say that's probably the best intro ever. So, thanks so much. My day has been made.
Excellent. Well, hey, we aim to please, right?
Yeah.
Hey, so Brian, obviously, I've been a fan of your podcast for it's coming up on a year, right? That you've been doing this. And for those of us who haven't discovered your podcast and who you are and what you do, why don't you give them a little bit of background and then we'll dive.
Yeah, definitely. The name of my podcast is the W2 Prison Break Show, the one that you were on. We had a great conversation. I would encourage everyone to go listen to that episode. We just had an awesome, and we align in a lot of ways. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And where the show really got its motivation from was from me. I mean, I'm talking to the younger version of Brian O'Neill, because I was like you. I was in a corporate position for 25 years. I was in corporate sales for 25 years, 17 years with the same company. And I was traveling 100,000 miles a year, not nearly as much as you. I know you were north of that, but I was away from my family. I was gone every other week on an airplane. And I knew that I always knew that I had something else in me. I had a business in me. I had, I was not meant for this. I really was not meant for this. And the older I got, the more money that I earned from my W2 position, and the more that I traveled, the more that I started to really challenge what I was taught as a child, which was go to school, get a job, get good grades, get into a good management training program, and work there for 40 years and retire at 62, and hopefully you won't run out of money. Yes, exactly. And then what happened, Ed, was I had a son, and I was missing him grow up. I'd come back. He looked different. He's talking different. I would miss moments of his life that, I would have to catch on either FaceTime or my wife sending me little 5-second clips. And that started to eat away at me. And then one day he said to me, he said, "Dad, I don't like when you leave the house. I don't like when you go." And that was it for me. I tell the story all the time. My son gave me the courage to quit being afraid and to try. And it was from that moment on where I started believing in myself and saying, I've got one shot to watch this kid grow up. Right. I'm not going to miss it. And that's really what the show is about. Like, hey, I went through all this stuff. You don't have to do it too. It can be a much more compressed timeline if you just follow some simple steps.
Right. And so, in terms of I totally hear you. I vividly remember my wife, Patricia, and I having a similar conversation around, I'm missing so much good stuff. And you only get 18 years and then they start their lives, right? I mean, I'm experiencing this now with my older daughter who's 20. And I mean, she's still an integral part of the family. And, it's awesome having her around, but she's not around that much, right? Between work and boyfriends and school and, all the other stuff that she does, she's already started her life. So, we only get her for a few months a year now, and that will dwindle as she gets older and starts her own career in her own adult life, and it's really interesting. So let's talk about your business and how you broke free from the corporate shackles that you and I both, neither of us miss.
Yeah. So I had been dabbling in real estate for a long time. It's ironic. Before I actually opened up my real estate business and went into business, I had named it 7 years prior to that. The reason I know that is because the note was saved in my iPhone. So
there you go.
I had the name, I never incorporated, and man, 7 years could go by really fast. But again, my son helped me with that.
Yeah.
So I would say that probably the biggest thing that I did, other than have that moment where it's like, okay, I am no longer going to let my self-limiting beliefs and my fears and my doubt run my life. Like, I'm taking control of my life, and my son gave me that boost, right? And I remember that moment vividly when I told my wife that. And the next day I hired a coach. I said, okay,
Wow.
I've identified my exit from the W-2. Like, this is going to be it, but I'm not going to make the same mistake I made for the last 15 to 20 years, which was, "Hey, I know everything. I'm good. I don't need anybody's help. I can figure it all out on my own." Huge mistake. That's why I stayed in the same place for so long. Hired a coach. I committed. I surrendered. And with those, there's a lot more that happened in between there, but with that mentality and having a coach, was able to leave that job in 9 months. Once I left my job, I was able to do enough real estate deals where I'd quit the W-2. We're coming up on 3 years now since that happened. And I mean, it seems like it was just yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
blink. Yeah, it goes fast. I had that conversation with my old boss. It was December of 2017, and I went full time February 2nd of 2018, and it feels like it was yesterday. So it does go fast. It does go fast. Yeah, and it's wonderful, right? So let's talk about your real estate business a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I've always loved real estate from a little kid. I used to beg my parents to take me to see model homes. So I that was something of passion for me. What I specialize in, what I specifically do, Ed, is we buy properties using creative financing strategies, right? So we don't go out and qualify for bank debt. We don't get loans. I'm not saying that's bad. It's just this is the strategy that I use on a daily basis, and we don't pay cash for properties. So looking for motivated sellers who maybe, they got divorced, they had a job loss, they're relocating, they can't sell their house conventionally. The conventional market doesn't solve their problem. I go to them and I use a variety of different methods, whether it's a lease option, subject to their existing loan, seller financing, or owner
Sure.
financing if they own it free and clear. And I acquire their property. Typically, it's without any money down. It's always without banks. And you're typically solving a specific problem, which is what real estate's all about, is problem solving, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, and you could do this on singles, multis, whatever. As long as the seller's open to it, you can do seller fine. You can do something creatively.
That's amazing. And so, it's one of the things that I've always, I'm more of a traditionalist, right? I have banking relationships and commercial loan relationships and a couple of really good hard money relationships. And that's the way I had operated for years and years and years. And actually one of the reasons that I got so interested in your podcast was because I wanted to learn. There's a handful of people that I've, seen and paid attention to, and I've learned massive amount. I'm actually negotiating a seller financing deal right now out in Indiana. So knock on wood that will go well. But the thing is that I've paid attention to you as well as a handful of other folks that I've met on LinkedIn and Twitter, and it's amazing how much you can acquire with able to mitigate your risk and also solve a problem for someone. So you get to acquire, build your wealth by helping other people out, right? But it's that problem solver's mentality that is the core of this.
100%. When I'm talking to, I mean, I don't talk to as many sellers as I used to because I have a team now. But when I used to talk to sellers all day long, and my team still does, that's what we coach them to do, which
Right.
is, hey, don't numbers are secondary. Math is secondary in real estate. It's always about, hey, what are you trying to accomplish, Mr. and
Right.
Mrs. Seller?
Yeah.
Okay, and how can I solve that problem? I might not be able to, but if I don't understand what you're trying to do, how I can help you get there, then the math doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Doesn't to talk
Yeah,
about.
it's irrelevant, right? If you can't solve the problem. Yeah, I mean, I always told my team, so I have a couple of folks that do acquisitions for us, or we get the ball rolling. And I've always told them, I said, if you feel like you're in a position where you're trying to convince somebody of anything, stop, thank them for their time, and hang up the phone. Because that's not the business we're in, right? We're in the business of, okay, where are you? Where are you trying to get? Okay, here's the things that we do to help folks like you. And here are your options. 1, 2, 3. Do any of those make sense? Yes. Okay. Then let's have a conversation about numbers, right? Well, I got a lot of it from you. So thank you.
People would do a lot more deals if they would simply take that approach, right?
Right.
As
Absolutely.
opposed to just trying to throw numbers that don't make any sense to people.
Yeah, I mean, so many people are in the habit of either, here in the Northeast, they're overpaying for properties. Good luck. And I had a conversation this morning with an agent or broker, really, who I have a ton of respect for, and we gave a really, I thought, an aggressive offer, and came back and said, no, you're 150K low to where you need to be. And I was asking, like, how the heck are these folks making these things pencil? And the honest answer he gave me was they don't, and they don't care. Okay, well, So, being able, and so I'm dealing with a whole lot of competition. When you get into the problem solving business, almost invariably it's a one-on-one situation, right? You have found this person, and I want to get into how you do that. And you're typically one of, if not the only, person who's interacting with owner, the couple, whatever, and trying to solve their problems. Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. In most cases, when I'm working with sellers and we're talking about doing a creative financing transaction, like I had mentioned, they're usually at the end of their rope, right? Like they've exhausted everything else. They got to go, they got to move, maybe they'll lose their house. And then it becomes, okay, that's how we start helping them.
Right.
And, they just want to be done with the house at that point. The house is blocking them from whatever it is that they're trying to do,
Right.
right?
Right.
Your job as a real estate investor, especially when we're talking about single family, is to remove
Sure.
that piece from them so that they can go do what they really want to do.
Yeah, and the thing is that the techniques that you talk about on your show and in your coaching program, I use them in multifamily world. Like I don't buy single family homes anymore. I'm entirely focused on multifamily. And
Mhm.
a lot of the things that strategies and tactics you talk about are directly applicable to multifamily, industrial, commercial office, retail, you name it, right? It's just because it comes down to human beings figuring out how to solve a problem and then working out the math to do it, right?
I agree. And in multi, I'll just say this, Ed, I mean, COVID, this to be true. COVID made a lot of people tired of being landlords, and that includes apartment building owners as well. So
Interesting.
not just single family. I mean, it became a hassle, became a headache, and they want out. Especially maybe some of these mom and pop owners who have been doing it for 20, 30 years and like, hey, I want to be done with this.
Right.
Those are people you can help.
Without a doubt. And so
Mhm.
so I'm curious. I want to kind of break down your system and how you do this. So how do you fill your pipeline full of deals? Because that's one of the things I always, when I'm talking with other active investors, we've got decent deal flow here. And they're like, how the heck are you doing it? And I was like, buy me a cup of coffee, or heck, I'll buy you a cup of coffee and we'll talk about it. And I'm curious how you do it.
Sure. So I have a lot of different ways that we get leads, a
Sure.
lot of different
Sure.
leads. Anyone starting new, I would always recommend mastering one or two and then adding, right? Because then you
Right.
just get distracted and then you do nothing.
100%.
So when I first started, and this is one of the easiest ways to get started for free, is the internet. Like we call on properties that are actively listed for sale by owners. Like you can go to Zillow and just scan all of them and call them. The numbers there, and then you can have conversations with them about what they're trying to accomplish, and then see if they're open to creative financing. I have access to a expired listing. So homes come off the market, they're actively trying to sell. We wait for them to expire or cancel, withdrawn. We call them. Like we're calling them up. Realtors are doing the same thing, right? So we're calling them up. But those are motivated sellers because they're trying to sell and they couldn't. Then there's a bunch of targeted lists that you can pull. I mean, I could do a whole show on targeted lists, but pre-foreclosures, tired landlords, vacant houses,
Yeah.
there's liens on the properties,
Go
out of state, free and clear. There's so many that you could pull and grab those. You could do mailers, you could do cold calling, I have an SEO campaign that I'm doing right now where I'm trying to get organic leads, where I'm trying to rank high on Google. Again, this is a colossal effort. I would not do this day one, but I'm 3.5, 4 years into the business now. We
Yeah.
have the bandwidth and the team members to be able to do that. So we get the organic leads. You can
Right.
do Facebook ads. I mean, like I said, we could do a whole show.
Yeah, I mean, but your point is well taken and spot on, right? I mean, on focus matters when you're creating deal flow, when you're creating capital flow. Pick one thing, maybe two. Get really good at it. Direct mail, email, lead magnets, content, social media, ads, whatever. Pick one. And there are dozens and dozens of ways to do it. Get really good at it, and then it, right?
Mhm.
Because I mean, even in my own life, yeah, I have a profound case of entrepreneurial ADD,
Yeah.
and so it's shiny object syndrome all over the place. And the times where I see folks that I work with, or friends in the industry, or me, when we're not advancing the ball down the field, is when when a human being's trying to do 14 things at once, right?
Yeah.
Be great at one or two, and then get those to the point where your team can take over, like you were saying, then pick another one and then another, right?
We make it sound so simple, but you just alluded to it. It's not easy to pull that off because
Right.
you are distracted. I mean, our brains are looking for distractions constantly. And if you allow it, the brain's going to win.
Yeah. But it's also an abundance thing, right?
Yeah.
Because, I think the reason that people throw the net so wide, or, tend to on a marketing and other, areas of the business, why they throw it so wide is they don't want to miss a deal, right? And the fact is that it is a big world out there. And as Robert Kiyosaki, I remember saying, the deal of the century comes along just about once a month. So everybody breathe, do what you focus, and your deal of the century will come, soon enough.
The
Right.
deal of the century's in your backyard. You just don't look there.
Right.
And that's I got better deals, bigger deals, and more when I niched down. So
Yeah.
I didn't cast. And the first time I heard that, I said, "You guys are out of your mind. I'm not doing that."
Right.
And then
Don't miss
I
one.
did do it. Happen, right? I started getting bigger deals and faster and closer to me and the deals that I wanted to
Yep.
have. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in the markets we're active, Connecticut, I'll use a perfect example. There are 1,208 properties in the state of Connecticut that I'd like to own someday. That's it. So that's my market. That's what we focus on. That's it. Right. And, I'd love to own 10% of them. Right. I don't own 1%. But, the fact is that by niching down, like you were saying, it is really the only way to become, we talk about it, in previous shows, I've talked about concentric circle marketing, and, basically you want to suck the oxygen out of the market so that by the time that owner is ready to sell, you're the obvious phone call or the obvious email, right?
100%. I mean, be the authority,
Right.
be the one that they're gonna remember when they're ready to sell,
Right.
and you can't do that if you're, covering the United States unless you have a huge team, right?
Right.
So, that's why I say just get super hyper focused. I mean, you said Connecticut, you could do a county. You could go into
Yeah.
a county.
We
I mean,
did.
I'm
Started
in
with one.
Chicago. I could do one county
Yeah.
and get a bunch of deals if I focused on that one county.
Yeah. That's what we started with. We started with one county and got really good at it and grew the team a little bit and, land and expand.
That's right. I like
Right.
that land expand. There you go.
So as far as your team goes, let's talk about that. So
Mm-hmm.
you have an acquisitions team. Yeah. Why don't you tell me about your team and how that's constructed?
Exactly. So I do have a team of 4 people currently on staff, and then again, I have partnerships. So I have somebody doing my taxes and my bookkeeping, and attorneys and all that stuff. You know the drill. And what we're focusing on every single day is lead flow. Like we're trying to fill the funnel, right? Like motivation scale on a 1 to 10. I'm looking personally as the closer to talk to people who are like 8, 9, and 10 on the motivation scale. The team is just filling the funnel. Like even if it's a no, it's a lead. Like my philosophy is you're either going to sell your house to me or you're going to sell it to somebody else. So
Someday.
that's a lead. So I have a person that's calling all day long, right? And then I have an assistant. I have an assistant who does all the stuff that I shouldn't be doing. And that would be, if anyone who's going into the real estate business or any type of business, don't be a one person show. Hire somebody from the jump. Otherwise, you're just going to go from W-2 employee to W-2 employee in your business, and you're not going to have a good time.
Yeah, creating a business and then having a job within that business is not the way you break free.
No, absolutely not. And then I have a social media person, so we do a lot of content creation. Someone helping with my podcast.
Sure.
Yeah, I outsource a lot of the podcast stuff, and we work. The team's been together for a couple of years. I've had one since the beginning, but I've cycled out the back door as well.
course.
People come and go, and then again, I have my coaches and my mentors and my support group. But there's a large circle of people that I'm connected with, and that's the biggest lesson I think that I've really learned in business versus when I was in my W-2 is like, hey, you can't do this by yourself. Like you got to have a
Team
team,
sport.
have to have a team. And I'm always looking for like, who's the next person that I can add, right? You got to manage capital, but your cash flow, but I'm always looking at like, who's the next person I can add to drive the business forward.
Totally. Yeah. It's, and that's the thing, I had this, so I've had the pleasure of working for several amazing CEOs. And one of them, Rob Bernstein, had said to me once, he said, look, every human being that I hire, there's a return on investment. Right? We're spending whatever we're spending in salary and benefits and all that overhead. And we need that plus back with each person that we hire. There is a distinct measurable return on investment. And it never, and I was pretty young in my career at that point. It never occurred to me that that's the way it worked. Right. I just thought, You hired, you ran hard, you drove revenue, it turns out you actually have to, measure your progress and figure out what your cash situation is so that you can invest in another role so that they can return additional value to the business, right?
Yeah, goodness, that better myself, and I work with a lot of small business owners, 1, 2-person show,
Yeah.
and they can't see that, right?
Right.
Just they get nervous about investing the capital, and it's like, this is if you're gonna invest anything, this is what you need to invest in.
Right.
Systems are important, processes are important, but if you don't have human capital, you're not investing in human capital, your business is only going as far as you are capable of
Right.
taking it, which is normally not where you want it to go, right?
Yeah, and you most pretty sure most human beings require sleep. So there's 6 to 8 hours a day that you're not going to be working, right?
That's right.
Right. So you got to create that operational leverage to be able to scale and grow the business. So in terms of the systems that you have in place now, when you say virtual assistants, are they U.S. based or are they overseas?
They're overseas and they're awesome. I mean,
Yeah,
I love them.
that's fantastic. And so, how do you manage communication with them?
Sure. So we do a couple of now they work US hours, right?
Yep. Yep.
And they're in the Philippines, they're all in the Philippines. So they're working, regular 8 to 9 to 5 hours. And we communicate in a couple different ways. We use WhatsApp, which is a great communication tool.
Yeah.
And then we have systems for tasks, like we use Asana, we use Slack, and that kind of assigns roles and
Right.
tasks so that we're not constantly having to, go through WhatsApp because it's hard to,
Yeah. It's
manage
hard to
that.
keep track of it, right?
Yeah, yeah, but the communication is dialed in, and then we meet several times a week. I have one of the things that I learned again. That's why I have a coach. Is you have to have weekly meetings. I have we call them 1-to-ones. I have a weekly meeting with each member of my team, and it's their meeting. So they're supposed to bring me the one, 2, or 3 things that they need my help on. Like, how can I help you?
Right.
And they've gotten accustomed to it. Like they'll come in, I'll be like, all right, what do you need? What do you need help with? And then they go right through their list, and then we're done, and then the business drives forward.
Yeah, and it's hard. I'm so glad you're saying that because working on your business, helping, serving the people that work for you so that they can do their job is absolutely critical. I was interviewing another investor, Nick Huber, and one of the things he had said was, and it really drove it home for me. He said, "Look, I need to create systems that any normal human being can walk into, understand, and succeed at." Right. And I'm paraphrasing him. He said it a little more eloquently than I did, but the fact is that, it's not always, hey, I got to go hire A+ players everywhere. Right. You can hire, as long as you have created systems and you spend the time that you were just talking about in terms of driving home those systems, the values upon which you operate, and then transition to problem solving, you're able to work on your business as opposed to having a job where you're doing everything.
Having a job. Absolutely. And I'll just lend 2 other comments there on the
Sure.
systems piece is I have my staff make a video library. They record everything that they're doing, right? So whether it's, how they generate leads or whatever task they're doing that they're repeating multiple times a week, they get recorded into a library, and that ultimately becomes the SOP, standard operating procedure. And if
Yep.
somebody's out and they don't know how to do something, they go to the video
Right.
that's been recorded. It's also
Right.
a training onboarding device tool as well.
You bet.
And then I'll just to your comment, which was great, Ed, about, working on your business. My wife and I are going to Mexico in a couple of months, less than 2 months, and I'm going there for a week. And I'm telling you, I will shut everything off. I will shut my email off. I will have on my phone that I won't be answering phone calls, and I'll answer them on this date. I will not touch the business, and I will not miss a beat. I tell you, and I say it to a lot of business owners that I coach. Like, what? They think I'm crazy, but that's what you're trying to get to, right? Is to be able to
Yes.
do that, and
Right.
it's easy if you just let go. Most business owners are the block in their business, and I was for a while, and I realized that. I said, I got to get out of this business so that it can move forward. I'm the one holding it back because I have an ego.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it comes down to highest best use. Where do you add the most value? And those are the things you should do. Everything else, you should have somebody else doing them or stop doing them, whatever those are. Right.
Completely.
Yeah. And it's an amazing realization when you come to understand that business, yes, they need you, right? But the business will run if you're gone for 7, 10, 15, 30 days. I have a friend of mine, Stephanie Cabral. She spends tons of time traveling because she's done such an exceptional job of creating her back office that the folks that work for her, much like the folks that work for you, and I like to think the folks that work for me, they're great at their jobs. And so when you go to Mexico, the contractors get paid, the taxes and mortgages get paid, and all the utilities get paid, and work orders get responded to, and customer service calls get responded to, and you come back and pick up right where you left off because everything else was handled.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, I miss nothing. It all gets done.
Yeah. Magic, but not really.
No.
So Brian, now I'm going to move on to the final four, which is the four questions, the four loaded questions I like to ask everybody. And so first off, I am I buy into having a coach or mentors wholeheartedly. In fact, I don't know how to do it any other way because, you are basically, when you're dealing with it, working with a coach, you're taking their life experience of 10, 15, 20 years and compressing it into, bite-sized portions that you can then turn around and implement in your own world. Right. And so I'm curious about the mentors you've had in your life and specifically, what's the best advice you ever got and who gave it to you?
Okay. Best advice I ever got was from my current coach. His name's Chris P. Fontaine. I believe you've been on
You know him
his
well. Yeah.
Yeah, you know him. You've been on his podcast, and I'll never forget this. And I tell him this all the time. This is when I wanted to leave my job, right? And I remember when I had enough cash flow, like I felt good about the deals. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to leave the job. And I was still nervous about it. Like I said, man, is this the right move?
Yeah.
We went back and forth, and he said to me, he said, Brian, the W-2 is the risk. And I stopped. I thought about that's all he said. And I thought about it for a second. And I said, yeah, he's so right. He's 100% right. Like, that's the risk. Me staying in the job is a risk. And I had seen that because I'd been through all the '08 layoffs. Right.
Sure.
I survived all three rounds. Salespeople usually are the last to go. And I said, hey, that easily could have been me. And if this happens again, I'm toast, and I can't replace my income. So he was right. And then that was, I think I had resigned maybe 2 days after that.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Haven't looked back.
it's a conversation. So my wife and I are wired very, very differently.
Mhm.
She grew up in a house like you were talking about, where you go to college, you go to school, you get good grades, you go get a good job, you work there for 40 years, and then you retire. They give you the gold watch, and off you go. Right. I think that's so, so risky. It's because you're at the whim of, in most cases, a manager or an executive who doesn't even know who you are. You're just a number. And when 2008 happens and Lehman Brothers declares bankruptcy and they've got to cut a third of their workforce, if the numbers work, you're gone.
Completely. I mean,
Yeah.
and to expand on the risk part is because people think being in your own business is more risky. And I just say, okay, well, let's make a hypothetical here. Let's just say you have a business, you have 100 customers in your business, you lose one. Well, you still got 99 other income streams. Well, what if you lose your job? Now you have zero. People don't look at it that way. They're just like, hey, I got health benefits, which all is nonsense. It all can be replaced. That is and I don't mean to offend anybody, that is a foolish reason to stay in a job, especially if you don't like the job and you're missing your kids grow up,
Right.
is health benefits and a retirement account.
Yeah.
You
Sure.
can come up with a different excuse.
Yeah, and in fact, I would submit that the health benefits you can get exactly what you have today outside of your employer, and the retirement accounts that you have access to are far superior as a self-employed person than the traditional 401k, 403k, right?
Without question. You're
Yeah.
100% right. And then some.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to the next question. So I'm always looking at executives and leaders like you and how they pull in information and sharpen that saw, so to speak. So I'm curious. First off, how do you consume information? Physical books, audio books, podcasts, whatever, and who are you paying attention to these days?
I can tell you who I don't pay attention to, and that's the news. That doesn't go on in my house.
Good.
Um,
Makes you happier, I'll tell you.
it does, and it makes you angry too if you watch it. So I consume, and I was an anti-reader for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I stayed stuck in my job, but I like audibles. I do like physical books. I typically read the physical books when I'm in like an environment. Otherwise, I'm doing a lot of audibles.
Yep.
I get the advice from my coaches and mentors and people I'm connected with from
Yep.
my mastermind, higher level people. I get their opinion.
Yeah.
Again, not the TV. And I love listening to podcasts as well if I'm driving in the car. Like, this was a big shift for me.
Sure.
I was traveling W2. I remember I used to sit in the airport lounge. I'd watch Netflix. I would just do stuff that was, mindless. I started to replace that with podcasts or books, or I would call sellers, or I would just do stuff. I would make valuable use of that time. So
Right.
that's why I consume information. I think a lot of people do it that way as well.
Yeah. I'm one of them for sure. Who are you paying attention to?
Right now, I'm reading a really cool. I keep saying reading an Audible. You can't do that. You can listen to an Audible. So I'm listening to the story of Grubhub,
Okay.
Chicago guy. The book is called Hangry, Hangry, and he's telling the story. The owner, former owner, he sold it, but it's a
Yeah.
fascinating book about what it takes to build something, right? And you mentioned shiny object syndrome earlier in the conversation, Ed, and one of the biggest takeaway, I think it was 2 days ago, I was listening to it. He said, "Hey, look, anytime you're doing something disruptive, making sales, asking people for money, doing something difficult, self-doubt will always be present, and you can't make it go away." Right? So he said, and then he had a quote after that. He said, the voices in your head will always be present. You just have to choose whether or not you're gonna listen to them. Right? Something I'm paraphrasing,
Nice.
but that was the message. And I love the Audible. I listen to probably, one at a time because otherwise I get too distracted. And then
Yeah.
podcasts.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. That begs the question. So
Mhm.
having been through your life experience, right? I mean, you've done a lot of different things in your professional career. If you had to start over, what would you do different?
Okay, I'm sure everybody says they would have started sooner, and I've let go of that regret, right? Because at least I started. But
Right.
I would say that if I had to, and I don't want to use that answer. I think that if I could go back to the younger version of myself, I was filled up with anger and resentment and fear, and I just wish somebody would have like pulled me aside and just said, "Hey, it's okay, man. It's okay if you mess up, right? You're supposed to, it's all right." And that's probably my biggest regret is I just didn't believe in myself, even though outwardly I projected it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But inwardly, I was just a scared little 8-year-old kid
Yeah.
in my 30s and 40s.
And so many of us are, right? I was certainly that person as well. In some respects, I still am, right?
Yeah.
But you learn to battle the negative talk and replace it with positive talk and vision for the future, and that's what gets you out of bed on Monday morning, even if that scared little 8-year-old is screaming, crying as you're finishing your coffee and getting in the car. Right?
That's right. That's right.
So Brian, when you're not talking about real estate or any of the other things that you do, I'm curious about how you like to spend your time with your family.
Oh, I love this question, and this is what it's all about is,
Amen.
just spending time with them and creating memories or what I like to refer to as front row moments. And I have a wife, I have a young son, he's 11 years old. He plays again, he's the one who gave me the courage. I tell him that all the time. It's important to let them know. He plays travel baseball. We're having a heck of a summer, just being consumed with that and going to all his games and watching them and just, watching them thrive and just being together and being with a good group of people. So that's what we're doing right now. And, we asked for that, Ed.
Yeah.
We asked for it, and it's come to fruition. So it's really, I guess you used the word earlier. It's just magical.
Yeah. It's I fundamentally believe that having a child is the single greatest thing any human being can ever do, right? And so as you said, you signed up for it. Suck the marrow out of that experience, right? Do everything. I had my someone who's close to me had asked, hey, what are your hobbies? And I'm like, daughter one, daughter two. I follow that one to swim meets and all the other stuff that she does on the side, and that one I follow to all the softball games and all the stuff she does on the side, and choral concerts and dance recitals and you name it, right? And it's the best. I can't imagine anything else. I'll build models and play golf and all that when they're off in their lives. But right now I'm, like you, I'm just happy to spend some time with them and watch them grow.
I love it. And that's the stuff they're going to remember. Not going to remember how many apartment buildings you bought. My kid's not going to remember how many houses I own. He's going to remember me playing catch with them out in the backyard. That's what
Yep.
he's going to.
Yep. Or standing on the pitcher's mound and look, into the stands and seeing you and your wife there, cheering them on, right?
That's right.
Yeah, it's the best. So, Brian, as always, this was, I always enjoy having conversations with you. So thank you very much for your time today. If people want to learn more about your podcast, W2 Prison Break, or your coaching program or you in general, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, everything's on the W2 Prison Break Show is my podcast. You can just go to w2prisonbreak.com and everything's there, right? Everything's there. I've got some free resources. The podcast is there. If you want to talk to me about coaching or get in touch with me, it's all there. That's why I would recommend everybody go.
Awesome. So Brian O'Neill with W2 Prison Break. Thank you so much. It's good to see you, my friend, and forward to catching up again soon.
Definitely. Thanks, Ed. I appreciate the opportunity.
This has been the Real Estate Underground podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. It helps us grow. Until next time, happy investing.